Malcontentment TANGO is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Hey there, malcontents. How are you doing? We have entered election month. Is 2020 just this total crap show of everything just takes? Sorry about that. I should have checked my framing before I went on the air. Been like frantically doing some things. So you does it feel like we're in election month? Everything in 2020 takes frickin' forever. This month is like 10 years long. This month. This year's like 73 years long. Oh my goodness. How's everybody doing tonight, malcontents? Do you have your aerodynamic tuna? And do you have your soup for your family? Not an advertisement, by the way, Facebook. It's soup for your family. We have to work on the lighting in Studio One. I know I'm in Studio One. So the story of why I'm in Studio One tonight, because I haven't been here in a while, like, where's the fancy pants setup? The system that we use to run the election show is not the system that is in Studio Two. A lot of the stuff that we did on in Studio Two, almost everything in there was run on 4K. Don't worry, it's geek speak. Including like all those videos and interstitials and stuff. We made all those in-house, by the way. All those videos and interstitials. So we need a lot more horsepower. So we moved that computer into there under the misguided belief that we would be doing the show in Studio 2 on Thursday going, hey, we have a president. And we wouldn't have to use all of the macros and videos and stuff that we had queued up for... I'm hesitating because there's a little bit of a technical problem. Just give me 1 second. He's back. Technical problem is solved. There you go. I love this. 2020, 24 hours to go. I want to be sedated. The Ramones. They're like almost all dead. They drop like flies. What the hell? Yeah, totally want to be sedated. There's a video I had planned to play tonight that we had made, and unfortunately the video has like a parental advisory when we put it on Twitter, basically. It's like, this video has sensitive information you need, so they won't even show a preview because we use the sniffing glue. I'm going to assume that what they're going over is we had the little clip of the sniffing glue scene from the movie Airplane, with it's just like, is anybody else feeling this way? All right, so let's get into it. It's going to be a relatively short show tonight. I can't pull this up on Facebook Watch for some reason. I have no idea. That I can't tell you, Dora, because I know I had it pulled up on Facebook. As a matter of fact, it's running on Facebook right now. Oh, wait a minute. Did it go off the air on Facebook? Oh, wait a minute. Do we have a total technical difficulty thing going on here? 1 minute. Maybe I'll shut it down and just restart the whole thing. Oh, no. It's showing me on Facebook. I see myself looking at myself. Don't know what to tell you, Dora. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's pull up first of all the U.S. map, right? Because that's what I think everybody cares about. This is what's on everybody's mind. We're going to talk about more than this. This is the current U.S. map as we know it. Now, I get something could get dropped in. Something could get dropped in while we're on the air. Wouldn't surprise me. I don't have like a huge big newsroom of army of people watching everything at every second while I'm on the air. Not every night I have a little earpiece for people to feed info to me. That was really cool. That was fun doing that. Anyway, let's talk about the map. We'll go over it. So where are we at right now? We're at 264 to 214. I know some sites are at 253. The Associated Press called Arizona for Joe Biden, and they are sticking to that. You're being biased. Oh, no, you can go back to our website days ago, and when we said we would follow what the Associated Press does for the announcements. And so that's what we've done here. So we're at 264, 214. There are 60 electoral votes that are left. Here's the important thing. You need 270 to win. So Donald Trump needs every state but Alaska to become president. Now, he'll win Alaska. That was just a given. And if you're wondering what's going on with Alaska, they count their votes slow. That's just how they roll up there. Interesting, Donald Trump isn't really worried about them stopping the vote count at Alaska. But they count their votes slow up there. And but there's no question that state is going to go to Donald Trump. In the case of Nevada, most of the votes that are left in Nevada at this point are in the Reno metropolitan area in Clark County, and Clark County is Las Vegas. These are the two most populous counties by a landslide, and they are both blue. Nevada went to Hillary Clinton by a very thin margin in 2016. We never considered Nevada a battleground state when we were setting things up, and we were like building the potential outcomes. I was like, fine, we'll label it a battleground state because if the polls were really off, then potentially it could. And we'll get into the polls and what maybe happened there. So anyway, right now Nevada is blue. We have no reason not to believe that it won't flip and that it will hold blue. Arizona is currently blue. Now let's go over it, and we've already talked about Alaska. Now let's keep moving around. Why do I have Georgia in purple? Because Georgia is basically a mandatory recount zone right now. There is 1,775 votes between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in Georgia. There are about 14,000 ballots left, allegedly. Now, why do I say allegedly? No, there's no conspiracy. I have not seen the 14,000 number come from Georgia officials. I am scraping that 14,000 ballot number, that 14,000 estimate, off of multiple news sites. But I haven't seen anything from Georgia officials to say there's 14,000 ballots left. Full stop. If you've been going up to the Georgia Secretary of State website, trying to kind of pull vote information off of there, I'm really enlightened now. It's like, oh, so this is why their C disease numbers are a hot mess that come out of Georgia, because their website, like for the vote count, is a hot mess. I'm not saying their count process is a hot mess, but I am saying that the website to get the information off of is a complete and total hot mess. So let's break this down in Georgia. If there are 14,000 ballots left and there are 1,775 votes between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, Joe Biden is a really good position to win Georgia, as we predicted almost 2 days ago, with around the 2,000-ish vote margin. And the way that we get there is if you do the math, if it breaks 60-40, and most of the ballots that are left are not only in areas that are voted blue, but these are mail-in ballots. And so even in counties that say maybe were purple or leaned Trump, the ballots that are coming in are leaning more and benefiting more to Biden. So if they come at 60-40, and what they're seeing is actually at a greater margin than that, but if it comes in at 60-40, Biden will win Georgia by literally a few hundred votes. If it comes in by 70-30, then he'll win Georgia by a few thousand votes. So I'm splitting the difference. I think they're going to come in 65-35. And I think at the end of the day, Joe Biden will win Georgia. That's my prediction. We are not calling the state. That is my prediction. There are up to 8,900 ballots that were requested by military and by people who are living overseas but are considered Georgia residents and could vote, expats, etc. The expat votes will probably be closer to Biden's favor. The military votes, of course, will probably go very heavy for Donald Trump. So the question is, how many of those 8,900 ballots that were requested were actually returned? We'll know that number on Friday. So I actually don't think that Georgia will be called until next week. Now, what we could get is Joe Biden, right? This tips blue. If a lot of those 8,900 ballots actually come back, the pendulum may swing the other way and it may go back to Donald Trump. But I think Georgia is going to be a state that will go to recount regardless of which way. So if Biden wins, I think Trump's going to ask for a recount. I think if Trump wins, I think the Biden team's going to ask for a recount unless they need to use their legal ammunition and dollars somewhere else, or they may feel like we don't need the state, so whatever at that point. Let's go to North Carolina. North Carolina, the margin is much wider there and benefits Donald Trump. The gap there is about 76,000 votes. North Carolina is allowed to accept ballots continuing into the mail, and I don't think it's going to be enough to move the needle, and I think that North Carolina will comfortably go to Donald Trump. Again, I am not calling the state. That is my prediction on the evidence that we have available to us right now. And then that leads us to Pennsylvania. As we went on the air tonight, the Trump lead had collapsed. Now, I know that there are people on the very far right and Donald Trump who's freaking out about this, and it's all a scam. And if you had watched on Tuesday, we had said, as basically every other pundit that is calling the election, there would be a red mirage in Pennsylvania and the pendulum would swing the other way. And I said before, and we also wrote this, if you had a Hillary Clinton grade margin of error in the polls, Joe Biden still wins Georgia. If you go a Hillary Clinton grade error, add another percent, Joe Biden still wins Pennsylvania. I think I said Georgia a moment ago. Apologies. If you strip away 1% of Biden's votes, you throw those ballots out in court, Joe Biden still would win Pennsylvania. And right now, the votes that are coming in are breaking at about 80-20, which is what was expected, meaning about 80% for Biden and 20% for Trump, because in Pennsylvania, most of the people that did mail-in ballots were Democrats. And this was in very blue areas that, by the way, if you look back at 2016, 2012, 2008 voting patterns, they voted in those exact same counties at, around 80 to 85% versus to 20, or 15% for the Democrat versus whoever the Republican was running at the time. There's no shenanigans that's going on there. There are also some state officials in the Republican Party that, I don't know particularly in Pennsylvania, but in some states that are kind of like, Donald, shut up about stopping counting the vote, because if we stop counting the vote, we have congressional seats that we're probably going to lose because those races are so close and the counts are helping in those congressional districts. So Right, it's really really weird because you have the Trump administration go, you need to stop counting the votes in Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, but you need to keep counting in Arizona and Nevada, and because they didn't cheat there and we didn't cheat there, but they cheated over there, right? It's like preaching to the choir. So anyway, what does all that mean? Again, we're at 264, so let's flip this over. This is what I think that the final election map is going to look like, barring litigation, barring like the Supreme Court coming in, or barring Trump going full dictator and saying, no, screw you. I'm writing the executive order and I am president because I can do it. So this is what I think the final electoral map will look like. And I think the final number is going to be 306 to 232. Now, I wouldn't bet on this. Like if somebody says you want to bet, I would go, nah. But I would bet on 290 to 248. That one I would bet. And by the way, that was our forecast on Monday before the election. If you go up to malcontentment.com. So where's the 16 votes? Where's the one do I think? It's Georgia. That's the state that I'm like, it's so, so close. They were apprehended due to the tip to the pool. Who was apprehended? What was apprehended? Convention Center. What are y'all talking about? Please find Hummer with a phone number. Yeah. See, so there's all this. People are putting up all these links about a potential Chud attack in Pennsylvania. Yeah, not surprised because the Chuds are freaking out because the Chuds know. The Chuds know, right? Because look what's happening with some of the advisors in the White House. Right? Fauci got real mouthy about Donald Trump. You've got the Secretary of Defense that is allegedly already writing his resignation letter and is going to submit paperwork to rename all of the Confederate named military bases to other people as he goes out the door. We're starting to see the acts of some people here that kind of think that the ship is sinking. You see Chris Christie, who his spine is about the consistency of a foam rubber pool noodle. But you have Chris Christie kind of loosely going like, yeah, Donald, let him count all the friggin' votes. You had Kellyanne Conway actually yesterday going, we need to count the votes. Of course, she's spinning it in her sick, cynical way. And I'm like, Kelly, I thought you were out of the administration because your kid's like in total crisis because of the bullshit that's going on in your house. Like the Conway's kids is like a metaphor for the United States of America. And those of us in the middle or either on the far left, but not so far that you want to burn down, or the far right, but not so far right that you want to burn it down, where you just don't like these three groups are like, will you all just shut up and get your shit together? The longer the results drag out, I think the more dangerous things get without a decision. One thing is very clear. Donald Trump has no interest in a smooth transfer of power. That should be crystal clear to everyone. I'm seeing your stuff here. I see your stuff here. Oh, we're going to talk about Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon's going to be a topic tonight. Yes. That's actually where I'm kind of segueing into here, Deborah. What we're seeing, for instance, in Arizona, you've got 3%ers and boogaloos, and Alex Jones is out there with him. And Alex Jones, I mean, this guy's got probably 5 squirrels following him everywhere he goes because they think he's friggin' made out of nuts. And he is 2 sandwiches short of a picnic. He's a can short of a 6-pack. He's 3 cards short of a deck. Whatever analogy you want to do. And Let's not forget Alex Jones, right? Drunk driving charges in Texas. He's under criminal investigation for selling snake oil cures for sea disease. So you have him. Steve Bannon today got kicked off of Twitter and his podcast forever. YouTube took the bravery to just delete his podcast from today, but they didn't take him off the air because Steve Bannon suggested that Fauci should have his head cut off and put on a pole in the White House front lawn because of all of the malfeasance he's done in trying to treat sea disease and prevent sea disease from spreading in the country if Trump gets a second term, which is beyond repugnant because let's not forget, because of Trump's rhetoric, Fauci now needs a Secret Service detachment to protect him and his family because he has so many credible threats against him because we are so incredibly anti-science as a society. Dora, I didn't watch it, and and let's not forget, Steve Bannon is under criminal investigation for stealing $24 million to build the wall, right? To contribute to help build the wall. And they just kind of put all that money in their pocket, suckers. Suckers. And people still listen to them. I think what's happening, and it's a reckoning, I think, for a lot of people. And I'm looking for my cell phone. I don't think actually I have my cell phone in here because I was going to hold as a prop as I do. I think what's happening here in America is social media and cell phones are showing us who we really are. I think people are like, what happened? What happened? What happened? And I've talked about this, with police brutality and inequality for the BIPOC community and inequality for the LGBTQIA community. And, Chris Rock said this, and I've said this, and and other people have said this. It's not just me. It's not that racism suddenly got worse with Donald Trump. What happened was having a 4K video camera that can shoot in almost any conditions at the push of a button with an array microphone that can get good audio. Like everyone's got one. Right? It's like literally, it's like, you can get a cell phone for $200 now. Like if you get, an entry level smartphone, Android smartphone, $200 takes amazing video and good audio. And it's just a push away and you've got it. So what's happening is that people are documenting it. The internet has given everybody a Gutenberg press. Here I am. I am using my Gutenberg press. I believe I'm using my Gutenberg press for good. We've built an audience. We've built a following. We have really high engagement numbers on our website, on our Twitter channel, on our Facebook channel. Like our Facebook channel, our engagement numbers, like seriously, if you're into social media, if you're a social media manager, if you saw our engagement numbers, you would be like, dude, you do marketing? When could I hire you? Our engagement numbers on Facebook are nuts. They're nuts. Which of course tells us we just need to build the audience. But we use our Gutenberg press for what I believe is for good. Now, I will say I do think that there are people who are trolls that go, I'm going to use my Gutenberg press for evil. But I do think that a lot of people that get on and spew what we view as vile and hatred and racism and intolerance, they believe they're coming from a good place. And what's exposed is how broken and awful of a society that we are. If you've been a longtime malcontent, if you have watched me for years, one of the things, like, do you notice what happened in COVID hit? What don't we talk about anymore? What just magically went away? Anybody? I know when I say it, like the comments, it takes 30 seconds and someone will probably type it. Did you notice the opioid epidemic doesn't exist anymore, right? We don't even talk about it. 34 million Americans abuse or are addicted to opioids. 34 million. There are 334 million Americans. 10% of the country is trying to kill themselves on opioids. That doesn't include other drugs. That's just opioids, right? Once the money runs out, that's when you go to the crack and the heroin and the smack because, right, you can't afford the opioids anymore. So you get the cheaper stuff, in the effort of chasing that high. And then you're in a so there's a bigger number than the 34 million. You have 100 million Americans that are diabetic or have pre-diabetes because they're eating themselves to death. They're committing slow suicide. And if you put that on a Venn diagram, yes, there's going to be some overlap of eating self to death and there's going to be some, no, I am not doing white power. I'm doing circles of Venn diagram. And I'm also not trying to do funky glasses. I guess I might look like that. But if you put the Venn diagram, yes, there's going to be some people sucking down opioids and some people who are overeating. I know, but I've seen heavy opioid users. Right? But it's not like completely, it's not like this. It's not a circle on top of a circle. Then you have people that are smoking, and then you just go on and on and on. It's like half this country wants to kill themselves. Why? Look at our gun violence numbers. Our gun violence numbers, when you compare it to other industrialized nations, is through the roof. In 2020, it's just been made worse. Well, that's all Black Lives Matter fault. Jesus fucking Christ. Really? Look at what happens to crime anytime there's a recession. The crime numbers go up every single friggin' time, and we're in recession. By the way, another sign that the rats on the sinking ship kind of know that the ship is sinking is Powell. Chairman Powell came out today and says the United States is in the worst recession of our lifetimes. And if you think about that statement, it just makes you go, so wait a minute, this is worse than 2008 and 2009? Because holy shit. And that's what Powell said. So this is just another example of the discord that's going on in the White House. Back to Bannon, and Sick Society and Gutenberg presses and, bravo to Twitter to go and we are pulling the plug on your thing forever. YouTube, like, really? We're just going to take it off the air, but you can keep, don't say that again, Steve, because, what's Steve going to do? Of course he's going to say it again. This the dude that lives off of old capitalist family money, then sits around and preaching Marxism all day? I don't even know what you're talking about. I live off of Campbell's money? Really? Wow. Cool. I don't know. Can one of the mods go over to the YouTube channel and I take care of John Doe? I don't even know what he's talking about there. You know it's a troll because the name is John Doe. Oh, what about Davis Court? I'm looking. See, I can see your comments at the same time now. I disagree that they got emboldened. I think it was just always there. I think it was always there. Maybe I don't know if it's emboldened. The match was there, but he's gone. Thank you so much. Bezos sold lots of stock today. That's interesting. Of course, what we don't know is that was automatic sales or not. I'm really thirsty tonight. Don't know why. I'm going to be a relatively short show. And thank you for taking care of John Doe. Soup is good food. Yes, it is. This is soup for my family. Next thing I want to talk about is the events that happened in Seattle last night. If you follow on Twitter, I kind of had my first tweet storm last night. Tweet storms are fun. I can kind of understand why dear leader is there, like, oh, cool. And we hit some tweet gold. We hit tweet gold with the Lauren Culp tweet. This is just such a good example of, like, this was just a thing, right? I thought it was totally innocuous about this Lauren Culp getting defunded. That's the way he put it. Dude, what did you expect? You weren't showing up to your job. You were costing your city $138,000 because you weren't showing up to your job. They were still paying you part-time so you could have your frickin' health insurance. How's that for some white privilege there? How's that, right? Is that some good Republican values there? Like, where is the accountability on this? Oh, and let's add, because he cost that city $138,000 while he was campaigning, the Republican Party was demanding that Jay Inslee pay for his police detail because Washington State has this requirement that if somebody is running for president, they need to be provided a security detail. So when he ended his very short campaign, thank God, the Republican Party was demanding that Jay Inslee pay the state back. Now, I don't know what the disposition of it is, but several reporters have asked the Republican Party, well, when is Lauren Culp going to pay Furry County back for covering him while he was campaigning? And guess what? The Republican Party in Washington State is silent, not even crickets. It's just kind of like, we don't want to talk about it. I remember a time when the Republican Party was, like, seriously, a core pillar of the Republican Party, like, to a fault was, we are the party of accountability. You must stand on your own. You know, it's do as I say, don't do as I do. And this kind of leads to the next point. And it's a couple of points. And then I'm probably going to close it up. Culp is a total goon. I'm reading your comments here. I totally saw the video of him crying on Facebook. It was just so pathetic. But this leads to a couple of points. I know that I had talked about this on Tuesday, and it's interesting because other pundits have written about this, right? This metaphor of the shining city on a hill, right? This Reagan quote. And I know, like, trickle-down economics didn't work. Reagan was wrong. I freely admitted that when I was Gen Xer and I was a youngins, I was totally all about Reaganomics. I had an Ollie North for President t-shirt. I voted for Bush 41. That was my first election I could vote in. I voted for Bush 41. I admit all of my sins to you, and I was wrong, and I could see that now. But things were very interesting, right? Reagan brought this sense of dignity back to the country, and we have lost a lot. And let me give you an example that I think that takes away a lot of the, look, I know we don't have a great international track record. And we have a long, illustrious history as a country of like backing the wrong people and the wrong party and it blowing up in our face and lots of people dying and destroying economies and all in national interest, or we create a mess and go, sorry, not our problem anymore. I get it, right? Pol Pot killing fields, we destabilized the Cambodian government. That's friggin' on us as an example, as a modern example. Now, let's go back. World War II, Germans went, and if you, on your dog tags, were identified as Jewish, on your dog tags as a prisoner of war, you went to a concentration camp, right, in violation of the Geneva Convention. The Japanese didn't recognize the Geneva Convention. They tortured, they killed, forced labor, starved, medical experiments. They did experiments on U.S. soldiers, prisoners of war, that makes Joseph Mengele look like a nice guy. And the United States, by the way, let those Japanese physicians and the military units that did these horrible experiments, stuff that would just chill you to the core, they let them walk in exchange for the medical research that they gained on that. And that research, all of this unethical research, then went to be used to advance medicine. So take that for what you want. And let's not forget also that the U.S., the entire U.S. space program was largely, had rocket fuel, pun intended, put under it by taking a bunch of Nazi Germans who built the V2 rockets and were working on the V3 rockets and capturing them and bringing them over. Look, I get it, right? The bombing of Dresden, another atrocity in World War II, right? There was no military reason to do this. The firebombing of Tokyo was another one. It was like, was there a real military reason to do it? Look, I get all this stuff. That's a whole separate conversation. The Japanese soldiers were told, And part of this Bushido code, this fight to the end, is if you surrender to the Americans, they are going to torture you. They're going to do these unspeakable things to you. And when the handful of Japanese soldiers were not bought into this, I will fight to the death, and are like, yeah, you know what? Maybe getting tortured is just going to be a little better because I'll still be alive. And they sort of, all of them were like, we could not believe the treatment that we got from the Americans. And what they mean is not when they, right from the immediate point they were captured, the Germans were racing to the United States lines to surrender instead of face the Russians because they knew they would get at least fair and good treatment and a hot meal. My father and the gunner in his vehicle, because my father had me very late in his life, he fought in World War II. My father caught and captured him and one other GI, a German column of 154 soldiers and 27 vehicles. My father told me this story one night. He told me all his war stories just in one night. He never talked about it. And his experiences in World War II honestly basically destroyed him as a human being. But he told me all of his stories one night. And this is one of the stories that he told where they were on patrol. It was very close towards the end of the war. And his gunner, he's kind of in a Jeep with a 50 caliber machine gun, and the gunner kind of, slaps him on the top of the helmet. He's like, stop, 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 turn off the Jeep, turn off the Jeep. And they listen, and they can hear all the clattering and all this other stuff. And they radio in, and they're like, hey, there's a big German column that's coming to the positions. And they were ordered to hold the position. And so Fritz, that was the name of his gunner. They were friends to the ends. Fritz visited my father like maybe 2 weeks before my father died. I actually have a picture of Fritz and my father together. My father died unexpectedly. And they both thought they were going to die. So Fritz was on the 50 cal. He gets it fired up. My father gets his M1. He gets over the other side of the Jeep, and they're getting ready there. And then the column stops, and a German lieutenant comes up with the white flag, and he's like, "Oh, Americans, like, we surrender." And they captured 154 Germans and 27 vehicles because they knew they would get better treatment. There's a lot of truth to these words of a shining city on a hill. The United States has been looked upon in the world as a beacon of a nation that tries to do the right things. Let me give you a modern example. When the tsunamis hit the Christmas tsunami and went through Southeast Asia, we had aid on the ground to these nations that were unbelievably devastated and completely overwhelmed. Ironically, before we had aid on the ground to our own people in Hurricane Katrina like a year later. Which, of course, then is this brings up the systemic racism and the flaws in our nation. There was a time we were the center for education, that this was the place to go for a good public education, for a good college education. Everybody wanted to come here for the world. The opportunity was limitless. This was the place to come, if you wanted to be an entertainer. This was the place to come if you wanted to start a business. This was the center of the universe for research in medicine, in science, in technology. We built the internet. We put a man on the moon. We created the GPS system that everyone takes for granted now. There was an era in time where folks like me and Gen X, we use these things called paper maps. We didn't have unlimited map on the universe in the palm of our hands. That ironically, if you lose cell signal, you suddenly wish you have a paper map, but that's a whole separate issue. We really were this shining city on the hill. And I remember when it started to fade, right? Because I remember that George Bush's line was 1,000 points of light. Did you ever hear that? 1,000 points of light. Going to be 1,000 points of light. And then that was the first, I think that was really like kind of the first time it was like, ick. We're not feeling like 1,000 points of light, George, because the crap was starting to pile up at this point, right? We had Iran-Contra. We had, Nicaragua is this country I have a very soft spot in my heart for. I love the people. I love the country. My heart breaks that they are under the rule of this madman Ortega down there. And Murillo, his wife, is She's worse than him. Then when Ortega finally dies, she'll be in charge, and it's just going to be friggin' horrible when that happens. And yes, Shell, that's exactly it. We were a respectable nation at that time. Um, we were, we had won in Afghanistan. We had beat the Russians. This was a Reagan thing, right? The Berlin Wall came down, right? We won the Cold War, and we did it without incinerating the nation into a cinder. Um, I think Gen Z. I think Gen Z understands Gen X because Gen Z grew up going to school, going every day wondering if they were going to get shot to death. Gen X went to school every day wondering if this was the day we were going to get vaporized. It was a real fear for Gen X school kids, just as school shooters was a real fear for Gen Z. Now, duck and cover and all that stupidity was long over by the time I got into school because it was like, it's not going to help you. It was just basically, by the time we went to school, it was take it like a man and get vaporized. And we were able to have talks about nuclear weapons, and we were able to have very open discussions as a society of the morality of this, right? And we've lost that ability. But yes, we did a lot of unhonorable, despicable, awful things. We are a nation steeped in racism and blood. There's no denying our history. We live on stolen land. We covered this. Like Columbus didn't discover. How do you discover something when people were already living there? He didn't discover a thing, and he was a terrible navigator, and he did horrible things, and it just went downhill from there. We committed mass genocide on a continent that had as many as 100 million people living on it. We annihilated them. We gave them nothing. I'm not denying any of our history. But there's still really, it's like in the Fifth Element, like everything you create, destroy, what there's V, there's very good things in the letter V, and there's beautiful things. We have done beautiful things. But we've really lost that. But what I think has amplified it and exposed it is, again, everyone has a device so they can highlight it, and everybody has a Gutenberg press. And it's gotten so easy with platforms like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and WordPress and Wix and everything else to do it. And then we end up in our little bubbles, and we end up very factionalized. I didn't watch Trump's speech today, and inside I was like, I should really force myself to watch this speech, and I just couldn't, because I didn't want to make myself suffer through it. But we're not the shining city on the hill, right? The world is like looking at us going, what the hell happened? And other people are going to fill in the vacuums. And, China, 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 we're going to beat China, right? I mean, this has been the mantra through the whole Trump administration. China's economy's booming. It is booming. They obliterated C disease in their country where we did it. Why did they do it? Well, they did it because their government kind of forced them to, and bad things happen to you in China if you don't. And I don't necessarily want to live in a society that operates that way. But I would love to live in a society like New Zealand where people are like, yeah, we should come together and help each other and our fellow man. Because I've been saying on C disease since March, if you just lock everything down for 4 to 6 weeks, this is kind of solved. And there's tons of evidence all around the world where countries locked everything down for 4 to 6 weeks, and then, like New Zealand, very slowly turn the dials. Now, New Zealand has some key advantages over the United States. They're an island nation. They have a much smaller population, and it's a little harder to get there. Don't deny that. But our response has been a joke, and the world is just looking at us. And, at the end of the day, here was the biggest thing that people should have realized, and here is my education from this election. Do you know what the mask compliance numbers is? This is where I hate that there's the delay. This is the one where I wish people could just go in. But do you know what mask compliance numbers is nationally? Go ahead and Well, well, if you say it, that's right. If you type it, by the time I say it, then you haven't heard it. So go ahead and type it. Mask compliance numbers in the United States is about 50%. 50 to 55% of people wear masks. Look at the national election numbers and who wears masks and who doesn't wear masks. So should we really be surprised by the outcome of the election? I guess not. And I guess that leads kind of to my closing point, which is what what about the polls, right? The polls were wrong again. And in some places, they were even more wrong than they were in 2016. Ohio, Iowa, Texas. In other places, they were pretty spot on. Nebraska, too, which Nebraska, too, New Hampshire. Another one that immediately comes to mind where the polls were about spot on. Wisconsin, not Wisconsin, Minnesota, a little light, but you can kind of give it to it. You don't have to squint hard to give the numbers there. They were off by Hillary Clinton grade margin in Florida. The polls are looking to be just about spot on in Georgia. The polls are kind of nailing Georgia, right? So it's not a total washout in the polls. I think, there's some people that goes, well, the polls are just broken. That's probably part of it, but that isn't probably all of the story, right? You have states like North Carolina that did everything they could to disenfranchise the Democratic vote, and not just in 2020. And I am not talking about illegal activity. They turned the dials on what they could do legally as far as they could. They almost twisted that knob off. North Carolina is a ridiculously gerrymandered state, and the Supreme Court said, well, you can do that if you want, which is like because state rights. I know, I preach 10th Amendment. I have to lay on my own sword sometimes, right? Some people lie to the pollsters. Barbara, but they weren't that bad. They really weren't. I mean, let's go back to this, right? Here's the prediction, 306 232. I think this is where it's going to land. If we land at 306 232, most of the forecasts were around like 335 200-ish. I'm back in the enveloping, right? Because 335 203, right? That gets you to 538. That's where the forecasts were. If we get to 306 232, the polls weren't terribly wrong. I just think it's frustrating because people are biting their nails on that, right? And right now we're at 264 214, and the only path to the White House that Donald Trump has, he has to run the board. And the odds are he's not going to run the board. So, when I say to run the board, that includes he has to take Nevada. He has to take Nevada, including running the board. And it's just like, it's almost certain to not happen. So I don't know if the polls are really all that off. Especially if he takes Georgia. And then Georgia becomes a little interesting to me. Although, again, Georgia, I felt Florida would go before Georgia. I think what happened in Florida was, and I had talked about this when Florida got called as a state on Tuesday, and I know we broadcasted for 8 hours, and there's tons of stuff that we covered there. In Florida, in the southern part of in that Hispanic population, this message from the Republican Party that Democrats are Marxists and they're going to ruin this really resonates with the Hispanic population. Ironically, the Hispanics that the Republicans don't want to have come into the United States because they're fleeing countries that live in these things like Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela as examples. And Ortega isn't a Marxist he's just a dictator. He's freaking horrible. They're Marxist communists in Nicaragua. Everyone owns their own property in Nicaragua. As a matter of fact, it's kind of that's one of the things is that the some of the absolute poorest people at least own the plot of land that their shack is on. They literally own it. They have a very, very high where you have your own business there. There's people, there's a social security system that you can pay into. There's private hospitals, there's public hospitals. Every kind of big corporation, the biggest grocery store chain there is owned by Walmart. Walmart's friggin' everywhere. By the way, I only got ripped off in two places in Nicaragua, and one of them was Walmart. Got totally friggin' ripped off by Walmart. True story. And then there's a whole funny story in Nicaragua. My wife and I speak Spanish. She's actually been studying it a lot more since we went there, and she speaks it a lot more than I do. I can just speak it in broken Spanish. But we were buying from a hot dog cart, and somebody yelled over. We understood the whole conversation. How much did you charge him? And and he was like, $100 because it's about $1. Yeah, you should have charged him 500. I said something very snarky back to him in Spanish, and he walked away. Kind of like, dude. Not the dumb tourist that you think I am. I'm here for different reasons. Yeah, that's the last thing I want to. I know I keep saying the last thing, but we didn't talk about what happened in Seattle last night. So Seattle last night, there was a group. It was the ENDD group. There are accusations. I wasn't there, and ENDD, and particularly driven by Pacific Northwest Youth Liberation Front. They don't want streamers, they don't want cameras, and every time that there is minimal eyes on the group or there isn't eyes on the group, there's mass arrests or something terrible happens. And last night, as things were happening around the East Precinct, and there wasn't really a streamer on the ground. I know there's the guy who lives in the apartment, and he was, that overlooks there, and I mean, he's about the guy that kind of gets all the video now for the most part. And I know Future Crystals got there later, and I know a couple other streamers got there later, and I know there were people we've seen people in ENDD stream before, candidly. Like, we've seen people in Block, and they're streaming, and we're just like, you have to be kidding me. Anyway, a protester was tackled by SPD last night, 5 officers on video. SPD is claiming that the seizure that the individual had was incidental. It happened at the same time. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. Is it improbable? It is improbable. Harborview, said they've had a seizure. They suffered a hypoxic injury. That's my word. Because lack of oxygen is a hypoxic injury. I am not, because I have a lot of connections at Harborview, so I'm always really careful when I talk about anybody that goes to Harborview. And to qualify, I am not sharing any information that you can't go into Google and find yourself in 2 minutes. Individual was in critical condition, and the word is in social media that they're now in serious condition. Seattle Protest Network did a tweet, where they I'm paraphrasing, possible fatality. We don't know. They even said, we don't know. SPD grabbed their tweet, retweeted it, said, this is untrue. The person is in stable condition. And this is where I went on this whole segue about Gutenberg presses, and I went on a tweet storm. And I wrote a tweet which really broke the fourth wall. And after I hit send, actually, I was like, it wasn't really journalistic of me, and it wasn't, but I think they used the word inaccurate, and I'm like, so was this IEDs as candles inaccurate? Was this arresting international credentialed press inaccurate? Was this firing less lethal weapons into medic stations at protests inaccurate? What kind of inaccurate is this? And then, like 15 minutes later, the Stranger reports, the publication, The stranger reports that this protester was in critical condition at Harborview, and then it was like, oh, okay, so it's inaccurate in that they didn't die inaccurate. Okay, we get it. You're setting the bar really low on the inaccuracy scale, and I'm saying it not with it's a snark smirk. It's not a glee and delight smirk. There is a really repugnant video after this incident happens where the police are walking back into the East Precinct and one of the officers says, I call that a victory. It is totally unprofessional. It is totally repugnant. But we are talking about the same police organization that played country music on Labor Day, that has taken delight in social and the ills and the failures, that put out propaganda videos. That's the organization that we were talking about. And Jenny Durkin and the city council continue to just play lip service, because I'll continue to say it. King County, you're racist as fuck. It's all an act. It really is. And I'm not saying it to the people that are watching me, because if you were in that camp, you wouldn't watch. And I know there's some of you that watch because you're like, it's entertainment. He's being an idiot. Fine. Thank you. You're amplifying our voices. It was just repugnant, right? And what was the crime? Well, the crime apparently was maybe spray painting on the ecology blocks at the police station. And now they're in critical condition. But we didn't do anything. And here's the body cam video, which, of course, I guess where they feel the body cams exonerate them, we're going to release that real quick. It's when you ever notice when, the body cams show them doing bad things, like pushing over legal observers, or as we caught on video, an individual bicycle officer coming, purposely targeting a legal observer, trotting up to them in their bicycle and striking them in the back of the head with one of their spray bottles for spray cans for pepper spray. There's another one that I just caught recently when I was reviewing video that I never caught, where a SWAT officer on the 9/7 SPOG march actually basically pulls the pin or whatever it is, right? Activates the flashbang grenade to get ready to throw it, and all of a sudden he has no one to throw it at, and there's a little bit of a discussion that goes on, and he chucks it directly under one of the vehicles on the car brigade in our video, and you can watch it. He literally purposely throws it under that car, and the flashbang grenade goes off under that particular car, which could have set that car on fire. Body cam video for that stuff, it tends to disappear. Cameras tend to malfunction, or, well, it's going to take us months to get that. Just, you ever notice those things? People that were saying, and this gets to the final point, people that were saying, oh, this is going to be all over in 11/4, and yeah, see, it's not over, because there's protests going on everywhere. And Donald Trump's rhetoric is just dialing things up. And as the election drags out, the election violence is getting worse and worse and worse. This weekend is going to be, there you go, walking their bicycles over Trumpet Man's neck. Oh, that's too funny. We had purposely in the chat blacklisted Trump, and we're going to because just people would come on and just type Trump 2020 over again. And so we also then, in equal opportunity, and to be fair and bipartisan, we blocked Biden. But that was because, again, we wanted people just come and chat and type Trump 2020 over and over again. And I knew it would just frustrate them to no end if they saw it. That was disappeared. Yeah, exactly. COVID hasn't disappeared either. Black Lives Matter movement hasn't disappeared. The unrest in our country hasn't disappeared. The dissatisfaction in our country hasn't disappeared. And the divide in our country hasn't disappeared. We're a broken country. I don't know how we put ourselves back together. And, when I see some people, let's just be friends. And it's not that easy, right? It's not that easy. And I don't know. I think our days of being the shining city on the hill, 1,000 points of light, um, those days are over. And a Joe Biden presidency isn't going to change the fact that 50% of this country take delight in the suffering of other people. That's an unfair statement. It's not. Because back on September 26th, when everybody was expecting the American Civil War to start in Portland, and like the whole international press, there was, there was probably more press than protesters and police in downtown Portland on the night of 9/26, all scrounging for some kind of story because the American Civil War didn't happen on 9/26 there. But I'll repeat this story because I'll never forget it. There was a pickup truck full of people from American Wolf. And yeah, like Peter Diaz and American Wolf, they are so batshit crazy that even the 3%, go look on their Twitter, even the 3%ers are like, yeah, we don't want to associate with you. All right. And the 3%ers are basically a terrorist organization, right? And they're like, you're even too crazy for us. So that should tell you about where American Wolf and Peter Diaz is. So they got pulled over in a pickup truck. Multiple people in that vehicle ended up being arrested. And this was right outside the parking lot where the Proud Boys and all these chuds were driving out. And as they were driving by, and there's multiple news crews filming this, their own people, right? Their brothers and sisters in arms are yelling out the window at them as they drive by, "Sucks to be you." So I'm sorry. Your side does delight in human suffering. Because then you look at, like the far left, and you think it's horrible that they try to de-arrest someone. And it just goes back to this whole concept of collectivism. And I don't mean that in the communist and Marxian sense, but this sense of esprit de corps, a sense of being a unit, a sense of unity and working together, and rugged individualism. And rugged individualism is kind of this American value. I mean, think about how we have romanticized that. We don't just romanticize it in white culture. It's romanticized in the BIPOC culture, right? The lone, Indian, because the lone Indian warrior, right? This is a romanticized figure, living off the land, taking what they want, just as, the Lone Ranger, the cowboy, which another example of the shining silver on the, right? He has an Indian companion, and he defends his Indian companion against racism. If you ever watch you can probably find the old black and white things on there. They're awkward and weird to watch, right? But the Lone Ranger is standing up for. It's kind of this progressive show, right? If you forgive some of the time periods, just ick. On things of like gender roles and how some races are portrayed. It is a super progressive show for the time, for the period. And then you have like, oh, we're gonna put Johnny Depp as Todd. Even then, I wasn't even like so, but I'm just like, what? Is Lou Diamond Phillips? His phone's not ringing. What? Johnny Depp? And I'm so glad that movie bombed. Not to mention, I'm like, well, I'm Gen X. I barely know who the Lone Ranger is. The only reason I know is because my father would have it on at like 3 PM on a Saturday or something. I'm like, well, fine. There's 5 channels and 1 TV, and so this is it. I'm gonna watch a black and white of the Lone Ranger. But we romanticize this rugged individualism. And I don't think it's a political ideology, this whole rugged individualism versus collectivism, right? They're loaded words politically. But we weren't like that. And there are moments in the South. I lived in Texas for 8 years. And there are moments in the South which I witnessed when things get, when something terrible happens in the town. And, when my parents retired to a very small town in Texas of about 700 people. in the butt crack of East Texas, in an area that is just as red gets. We actually have a person that follows from Page that is from that town in Texas. When they give me crap, I always ask them, I say, so have you gotten any aid for the tornado that tore through the town yet, or did Trump abandon you? And they always shut up after I say that, because it's like, yeah, Trump abandoned you. Rugged individualism, suck it up. And not that I'm taking delight in their suffering at all. It's just like, hypocrite. Don't be, you're voting against your own interests. You're mad because FEMA isn't declaring, a disaster area, and the town is absolutely a disaster area, and you're not getting a disaster area, but you're still going to vote for the guy because abortion or guns or some other wedge issue that's going to make you ignore all the other horrible things that they're doing. Anyway, I'm just kind of ranting. I'm tired, if you can't tell. It's been a long ass 72 hours, and I did a shit ton of real work today. Like a shit. I rolled out a website, whole website for a client, edited video for a client. We're prepping for a big live. We do live events, and we're prepping for a really big or remote event. When I say live, we do remote events, and we're prepping for a real major remote event in December. And we kind of kicked off the official launch of that. We were going to kick it off actually this week, and the client and I agreed that everyone's going to be distracted with the election. It's tough, kind of. This is just a tough time. Let me see if there's anything. No. Trumpet Man. If you're talking about Trumpet Man laying down in that, it was on the 23rd of September. I remember that because I remember the exact date because that was the Breonna Taylor March. There were almost 1,000 people out. And it had this it felt like June, it really felt like June 2nd up on Cap Hill. There were a ton of streamers and a ton of people that came out and were like, yep, it's like June 2nd. And for those of us who were, been out there, the grizzled veterans, we were reminiscing about it. And I think in some bizarre way, eager to eat some pepper spray. All right. It looks like comments kind of slowed down, so I don't know if anybody is. I don't even know if anybody's watching. All right, malcontents. I think that's going to be it. I went longer than one ad anyway, and I need to go to bed. I got a long ass day. We will probably be streaming in the field tomorrow, and we'll probably be streaming in the field over the entire weekend. This was kind of the plan. I had planned to stream tonight, but client work and the election. You know what? Before I go, let's just see. Do we know anything about Georgia or any other friggin'? I'm sure somebody would have been in the comments. They called the state. No, nothing's been called. Let's see here. Anything on Georgia? No movement on the numbers in Georgia, and that was kind of implied. So I think that this last drop we got when they said there were 14,000 ballots left, that is probably going to be it. I'm honestly surprised that North Carolina did not get called today. I'm really honestly surprised. Not North Carolina, Nevada. I'm a little surprised North Carolina hasn't been called because I don't see how Biden can catch up in North Carolina. But Nevada in particular, I'm really surprised because almost all the ballots that are left in Nevada are in these blue areas. These, and Clark County in particular is really blue. If you look at the vote counts and the population counts, when you get outside of Reno, when you get outside of Clark County and the Vegas area, like there's one county, like the total votes between Biden in the entire county, it's like 300 people, and the whole county voted. So there's some areas that look geographically enormous on a map. And they have like nobody living there. Trump is leading in Arizona? Really? That's not what I have. I have Biden still leading by a significant margin. I mean, when I say significant margin, I mean almost 2 points, 50.1, 48 point. I just checked the second source. Same thing. Let's see. Here's another one. CNN is taking some Schneiderfruit on Fox News, kind of going, they called it too early. Um, I'm not seeing anything saying that the vote switched. Oh, okay, why is Alaska not called? Alaska is not called because their vote count there is just really slow, right? Remember, it's a really, really big state, and it's just everything is really. Oh wow, that's a typo in the scroller. That's on me. Here, I can fix that. I could fix that right here. That's real easy. Um, it shouldn't be Arizona. What it should be is it's supposed to be Alaska. Ha ha. There you go. It's fixed now. Just like that. In all seriousness, it's fixed. When you see it scroll by again, you'll see here. As a matter of fact, I could reset it. Here, we'll switch seeds, and there that should reset it. He's leading in Arizona. Thank you for the catch. He's he's leading in Alaska. I told you I was tired. Tired. Um, no, he's not leading there, and I don't see him leading there. And I've already explained why Arizona, and I always felt that he was going to win Arizona. That was part right. My final forecast, original forecast was 290 to 248. That's up on the website. And I would have bet money on that forecast because I always believed that Biden was going to win Arizona because I believe Arizona now is a blue state. I think it's a blue state because it's becoming younger. I think it's a blue state because you have a growing Hispanic population there and a BIPOC population there, and you had a lot of people that had left California. And they have moved to Arizona and to the Phoenix area and the Yuma area for jobs and lower cost of living, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so there, you see, it's fixed. It's, it's the miracle of live production. When one can somebody get the spam thing out of the chat here and don't go to gameshowready.com? Like, what the hell? Mods, ban hammer. Ban hammer. I want to see somebody, the mods. I'm waiting here to see the mods saying, go by. Yes, Pam, I agree. Everybody should get some rest. We're not going to hear a winner tonight. I really expected that we would hear Nevada was out of reach for Trump, and that we would have a 270 for Biden. Right, 270 would be disputed because I know that the AP, Fox News, several other sources would say yes, 270, and others would say no. Right, that they're at 259. But I do think, I'll go back to it again. I think in the end, I think that's what it'll look like when it's all said and done, barring legal wrangling or something like thank you, Ty. I do think at the end of the day, this is what the electoral map's going to look like. But don't fool yourselves that anything's changed. That goes both ways. That goes to the left and the right. Nothing's changed. And I think that we're still in this really dangerous place. The protests are going to continue. The unrest is going to continue. And here's also my last thought. If you're a small business owner, if you're on unemployment, and like you're counting at the end of the year, and I say this as a small business owner that sometimes I'm like this, and you're counting on some, further stimulus or something, you're dreaming. You're absolutely dreaming. Um, Certainly, if Biden wins, my belief is that Mitch McConnell will do everything he can to drive the economy into the ground, to blame the Democrats and blame Biden, and to essentially sabotage his presidency. I absolutely believe that. And if Biden wins, it's not a reflection on Joe Biden. It's a reflection on the composite of that we have a Democrat House, a Republican Senate, and a Democrat president. And Mitch McConnell will do everything to sabotage Joe Biden for the next 4 years. Everything. And if there's one thing that was a crushing defeat for Democrats, it was not picking up the Senate. That absolutely was a crushing defeat. And on that happy note, Malcontent out. The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontent Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter.